Hello and welcome to another episode of Visceral Musings. My name is Cody Reed, and it is Wednesday. That means it is time for the season finale of Season 1 of Visceral Musings. This podcast, this show that I came up with all on my own. We've done 10 fucking episodes of it, which is crazy to sit and think about that in retrospect. Today, your guest is none other than me, Cody Reed, and your host is my buddy. You know him, you love him. His name is Nicholas Oz Perez. And man, it got deep. We talked about my most profound childhood memories. We threw some shade at Taylor Swift, and we find out, am I Flop Gang or am I Window Squad? Totes McGoats. More so than all that, we talked about my favorite movie of all time, I Love You Man, starring Jason Segel, Paul Rudd, and Rashida Jones. So sit back, pop a squiz knot, and listen to me get interviewed for the first time ever. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us, and take it easy, City Slacker.
Why would you want to masturbate for longer?
Dude, I've masturbated in a pinch. Slap it a bass.
Jesus is your favorite animal.
Lock that tongue down, girl.
Tortured penis department.
A finger in the ass. Foo Fighters. Hello and welcome to another episode of Visceral Musings. My name is Cody Reed, aka Roller Pig, aka C-Section, and my guest today is, he likes to kiss with his ass clenched and his eyes wide open. His name is Nick Perez. You know him, you love him. Oz, buddy, how are you doing today?
Hey, beautiful. I'm so good, man. Thank you.
Let's pretend like this is the very first time that we're ever doing this. And yeah, we just had technical difficulties, and we had to scrap about, I want to say like 5 or 7 minutes of recorded dialogue and restart. So From the top, it's great to see you, bud. I've been saying, and I don't know if like anybody else has told you this, but like I've told many of our mutual friends and like just people in general, anybody who will listen, that the episode of Everything Everywhere All at Once, that was so far, still my favorite episode of this podcast. It was so good. And so thank you for being here today and for also doing that episode, because it really just kind of nailed it for me.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm excited flipping the script with you today. And honestly, like, it's great. So it's good.
That's right. I guess I shouldn't have said guest, because today I am the guest. You are my guest host. And you have a couple of things planned for us, no?
Yeah, no, I do. I've listened to many of your episodes. I feel like obviously I'm no Cody Reed, but I have a lot of the same tack points, and I'm looking forward to giving people the mirror experience with you. You know, getting a view of Cody Reed to see from the outside in.
Yes, and what a way to end the very first season of Visceral Musings. This is Season 1, Episode 10. Your host is Nicholas Perez, and I am your guest, Cody Reed. So go ahead, Oz, take it away, buddy.
Hey, beautiful. So obviously, being that this is Visceral Musings, the first question for our lovely guest today has got to be, Cody Reed, who are you, and what do you do?
Man. Well, my name is Cody Reed, and I don't know. I have imposter syndrome. I have a hard time calling myself a musician. I definitely would not call myself a comedian, but those are two things that I'm mostly interested in. Like I've been playing music under the moniker Negative 32 in one way or another since I was about 19 years old, and now I am 27. So, and that feels weird. The retrospect of that feels weird. I started doing comedy in January of this year, and that's where I think that's where the real enthusiasm for Visceral Musings came for me, was from that, because it made me feel like I could just fucking do it. Like it was, so to answer your question, what did Trevor from Whitest Kids You Know say? I'm a sex pot. There you go.
There you go. I love that, man. Are you proud of you? I'm proud of you, but are you proud of you?
I will be. I think that's the goal, is to just keep working at this shit and caring about it until other people do. And I hope that the amount of care and just overall bussy that I put into most of the things that I try to do, I hope that it comes across to, I hope it finds the right people. I hope this letter finds you well, is really what I want to say.
That's beautiful. Our our podcast has every episode opened with a fun question, and I skipped it this time, but I did want to circle back. Cody Reed, are you Flop Gang or are you Window Squad?
I'm Flop Gang, and I feel like most normal men are, and like just male presenting people. I think most sane people are fucking Flop Gang. I do know a couple Window Squad. I'm not going to out the Window Squad. I want them to organically come forward and announce themselves. But the reason why I ask this is because there is a baffling. There's a flap in men's underwear, and there's a population of men that piss through the piss window, and I don't know why, but I'm fascinated as to like why you think you're saving time by pissing through the window.
Yeah. No, it's exactly kind of a curious thing because I don't know. I feel like it's almost more work. Like, I'm just thinking about the implications of that statement. But, like you're trying to get the hose. Like, okay, you've probably wired things before, an instrument or some kind of electronics where you're trying to take the wire and you're feeding it through a small hole.
You're threading the needle.
You're threading the needle here, but like, in a regular world, you are also wearing shorts or pants. So you have to unbutton, unbelt, unbutton, unzip, unfold, then reach into the window and articulate a Johnson. It just to me seems like maybe a cumbersome. Perhaps it's the Chads. You know what I mean? Like the real winners.
You got to conjure a dick out of that window.
The real winners do Window Squad shit, and maybe that's why I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's that billionaire mindset type shit. Those are like the Andrew Tates pissing through the window. I also thought too.
Andrew Tate's definitely Window Squad.
Fuck yeah, he is. He said the other day, "I don't eat," and he was talking about how like eating is such a beta move to enjoy food. Like what? I don't understand. That's the kind of shit that I associate with it. Although there are people that I know and love that piss through the window, and if they ever listen. I don't always necessarily agree, but I think that just off speculation alone, I would be willing to bet that like the Jordan Peterson and like those kinds of guys pee through the window. But I also was thinking if there were a chart, like the dribble factor's got to be much higher. To like,
I was actually just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine if we had access to accurate reporting, which is always the problem with reports and statistics, I bet you'd find a lot of overlap between Window Squad and not washing your hands after you're done.
Ah, that's a good point. There was a famous quote from Tom DeLonge where he said that the only clean way to pee would be to you have to pull your dick out before you walk into the bathroom. Because if you're going into the bathroom, you touch a handle or the door, and then you handle your shit, so your dick's dirty. So you need to pull it out before you go into the restroom.
It's like that fucking pyramid. What's that puzzle problem where you have to build the pyramid with the little coins and you can't let the bigger ones touch it? It's silly.
Yeah, it's like you have to Monty Python your way into it, is what it sounds like.
Right. I was watching the Planet of the Apes recently, and that's what made me think of that.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, man. So
Beautiful answer to that question.
Thank you so much.
Moving forward from genitalia and statistics, I'd love to know a little bit more, unless, of course, there's further overlap. I'd love to know a little bit more about what you feel is your most profound and impactful childhood memory.
Oh, okay. So there's a couple that it's weird because like immediately I thought of a couple of them. One, there is this time that I have two. I'll give you two. The first one, my older brother Corey, who claims he listens to this fucking podcast, and you know what? I implore you.
Putting him on the spot.
Yeah.
Shout out to Corey.
I'll know if I hear from my older brother that lives out in Germany. Anyway, there was this time when we were kids that his best friends, they played in a band called Life on Standby. And so, which is weird because now there is another band called Life on Standby. So it's kind of like, it's weird. to like look back. Yeah, it like became a new thing. But anyway, there was a time that they invited me on stage when I was like 9 years old to come up and like play guitar for a second. And that was life-changing because like even though it was a small local show, I didn't look at these guys like they were a small local band. Like to me, that was like it. Like they were the coolest. So like,
well, just kind of to add to that perspective, because you and I grew up in the same area. I'm a bit older than you, but I distinctly remember the window of time where Life on Standby and Ann Arbor were like the local bands, with Alaska and Me coming right after that. In fact, I remember distinctly when I was looking for local shows as a kid, looking for ones where Life on Standby was playing, or Alaska and Me, because they were just, they slapped. I mean, shout out to the fine boys and girls of Alaska and Me and the wonderful folks.
Except for Ian and Ben. Fuck those guys.
You know what? And Charles too, while we're at it.
Oh, actually, yeah, dude. Charles is my dude, and whatever their singer's name was.
Now he's your dude.
Yeah, Charles is my dude. But Ian and Ben, I just spent the whole weekend with Ian and Ben. I love those guys.
Yeah, they're beautiful people. I have a very purple drink flavored memory with Ian and Charles. So shout out to those beautiful folk.
I love those guys. But anyway, back to the initial point. They did bring me up on stage one time, and so that was big because like that was the first time I ever got to like be a performer, and like it was something I felt like at the time it was bigger than me. Like it was so cool. And then when I got a little bit older, I raided my older sibling's CD collection, and my earliest introductions to the music that I ended up becoming like infatuated with were Kip. So Kip was the singer of Life on Standby, and Matt. I loved Matt. Like is just a dude. He was always like the fucking man. And so Corey, Kip, and Matt, and a bunch of their other friends, but like these guys, they made mix CDs, and somehow they made their way into my possession. And that was my real introduction into like music. That's where I learned how to play guitar. Was I got a little boombox. I would set up my boombox and I'd throw in these mix CDs, and then I would just push play, pause, and try to like make whatever was in my hands sound like what was coming out of the speakers. And that was the first time I ever heard like Lagwagon, Bad Religion, and then Midtown, Taking Back Sunday, Blink-182, Boxcar Racer, just so many fucking bands that were like pivotal to me. Rufio, Slick Shoes, like that's where all those bands came from for me. That was the first time I ever heard them. So, and I still remember distinctly, like in my head, what those mix CDs looked like. I remember putting them on. I knew the track listing as if it was a real fucking album. Like I remember, like I knew where to find all of the pieces of like the puzzle, and that was where I learned how to play music. So that was a big one for me.
The art of the mixtape is all fucking but gone, man.
Right.
A good mixtape is definitely close to, you know what I mean, a good album in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I remember one of the first songs they had on it, which solid choice. I'm going to assume that it was probably Kip, because Kip was really big into Census Fail. And but I remember I would put it on and it would just be like, "This song will become the anthem of," and it was "Saves the Day at Your Funeral." And
that's so funny.
It's huge for me. But yeah, that's probably to answer your question, that's my most profound childhood memory, was my older brother's mixtapes and my sister's CDs too. I rated the fuck out of those shits. That's where I heard the
That's
Used.
super beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh man, no, I love that. Have you ever been so fortunate as to sneeze while coming?
No, but if you want to know, I've never sneezed during. I don't think I've ever sneezed during sex. Now that I think about it, I can't like think of a time. But I have cramped to the point where it's ruined the session. Like,
oh my goodness.
Like my calves will like, I'll get the gnarliest like Charlie horse, and I've tried to like redeem it. I'm like, just give me a second, and then I'm like, I have to, dude, hit the fucking benches, take a shot. Like, yeah, dude, it sucks fucking bad.
That's such vulnerability. I'm so glad that you share that with me, man, because like, it is so hard. Like, not to harp on the old fucking toxic masculinity train, but it is so hard, especially in a sexual context, to be vulnerable as a man, and to have your shit rocked by a Charlie horse is very legitimate, very valid, and it's a bummer that you've experienced that.
Yeah, I've always had really tight hamstrings, and then like if it's a day where I've like exercised or done too much, and then I like go for it, like I'll be swinging for the fences, dude. Like I usually don't try to fuck around. I try to come in with like a clear cut mindset, you know, like I want to get from point A to point B, and I want to do it efficiently and effectively. And then sometimes, dude, you just like you hit a couple other letters in the alphabet that you weren't expecting, and yeah, definitely, dude. I've really been I've been fucked harder by Charlie horses than I ever have a partner. I can tell you that much.
Beautiful. I love the execution on that. Let's take a moment to talk about your home decor. So I've known you for an absolutely ridiculous amount of time. And in the time that I've been in your own personal dwellings, I've seen a sort of evolution that it's fascinating, to say the least. Just to kind of give a disclaimer, I'm not the most organized, and walking into a Cody Reed dwelling, you'll find things are usually very well kept. But the most fascinating evolution in your home decor has been the religious accoutrement.
Yeah, I knew where that's going. Yeah.
You have a lot of fascinating grandma culture and Christian stuff. I'd love to hear the logic and sort of story behind this.
Oh, dude. Okay, so I remember that I think it was just like that. I thought it was funny one time that I was at the Goodwill in Show Low, and just like kind of looking at stuff, and like I found a few things that I thought were like funny, but I was like, I don't want to buy that because I don't want to give people the wrong idea or whatever. And then I remember when I lived at the same, I'm not going to say the name of it, but the same apartments that you live at now. I lived there when I was a kid, and then I ended up living there again as an adult. And somebody who lived by us gave me a pamphlet called "Hey, I'm Gay," and she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she thought that I was gay, and she gave me an anti-gay propaganda like zine, which, you know, if it wasn't so fucking tragically homophobic, it was actually a really cool zine, and I held on to it for a while, and then people were like, "Who's this fucking homophobe with his like?" Whatever. So throughout the years, I lost it, and then the Jehovah's Witness started sending me shit again, and I ended up with this book that was like the Great Controversy or some shit. And then I was like, that's funny. So I put it on the shelf. And then I got a Book of Mormon, so I put it on the shelf. And then I just started, where it actually really started to take off was, I can't remember what they're called, the Gideon Bibles. So sometimes they have them inside of hotel rooms. I started snagging them, and then going to thrift stores and getting different colors of the Gideon Bibles. And then now I have a whole bunch of them. And I remember this specific time that I was walking around in Flagstaff with an ex-girlfriend, and there was a window, and it was like, it's called like the religious store or some shit like that. So we went in there, and there was a statue of Ganesha, the clearer of obstacles. And I was like, that is unsettling as hell. And then she bought me a statue of Ganesha. And then from there, that's like just kind of like opened the floodgates. And I was like, you know what? I'm glad that people are going to walk into my house and be so confused by all this religious shit. So like my brother has bought me these really cool crosses from Turkey, or not Turkey, wherever the hell he was. I don't remember. It's really cool. It's a beautiful like porcelain cross. I have this really unsettling picture of the Virgin Mary. And when you get closer to it, like the image shifts. So I don't know, dude. I love it. I think it's weird. I think it's creepy. And I love that it gives people the entirely like, because I mean, I'm very tolerant of people's beliefs, but like the more I've dug into like the lore behind certain religions, the more like I've learned about Judaism, there's like things that I want out of there. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. No, I think that's great. It's like your roosters or your Christmas village or your porcelain masks or your insert grandma fixation. You know, you've been to an old person's house, not trying to be ageist, but like they have a favorite animal and it occupies 80% of the decor. Jesus is your favorite animal and it occupies a vast amount of your decor.
Yeah, that's like my farmhouse shit is all just like religious shit that I've collected from thrift stores or whatever. But people always tell me too, they're like really superstitious people. They're like, you don't want to buy that shit because it's going to have like a feeling or something attached to it. And I'm like, Okay, now you know that I want it more. That you said that, like you're telling me this might be haunted. I want it even more now. So,
like, who doesn't want to fuck a ghost? If we're being completely fair.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ghostbusters, and like, if you could get that blowjob scene from Dan Aykroyd, if I could get that, I'm all in, because I would. That's a story. Most people don't have stories, and I want stories. So no, yeah, that's all of my shit's religious. I've actually gotten more. My favorite thing I've gotten recently, one of the things that I've procured is also from the Sholo Goodwill, because I was just there recently. We found a plaque, like a commemorative plaque from when the Backstreet Boys won an award. I don't know why it was there. It was $3.50, and my girlfriend found it, and I was like, fuck yeah, we're buying that. So now we're just trying to figure out where's the right... Oh, so another thing, which I really do... we can move on right after this, but prostitution licenses.
Yes, they've got a bunch of those at thrift stores up here. They look like they're gag items, but I've definitely seen a bunch of them.
I like the
no
real
pun
ones.
Intended.
So, we found them in Cottonwood. The first place I found them was in Prescott. I love Prescott, and we found a bunch of them there, but they were so expensive. And then we were in Cottonwood, and we found like real ones, and so like that's been another like weird fixation of mine, is the prostitution licenses. So I bought I have one right now, but they're expensive. So those will be more making an appearance too.
Do you have a newer tattoo there under your sleeve?
I do. I have it's a moon. I have a moon.
Oh yes.
Yeah, with some stars and a cloud. Yeah, it had to do with like nighttime stuff, because I'm a big nighttime night owl guy. And so, like, comedy, music, everything that I've been into is like a nighttime activity, and then that became a fascination with the moon. So this is actually kind of like a play on the La Luna tarot card, but again, tarot. I have a tarot deck. I have a collection of religious shit. I myself am not a pagan, Wiccan, Christian, anything, but I do have a fascination with the moon, so that's why I have it.
That's beautiful. What's your opinion on composition? Kind of leading this into another question. How do you feel about composition as it relates to tattoos or art? So, like, are you a piecemeal, I'm going to eventually be a tapestry of bullshit kind of guy? Are you I'm a piece of paper with a couple scribbles in the corners kind of guy? Or are you everything on this arm is going to be a cohesive X or Y theme, subject, etc. kind of guy?
Yes and no. So when it came to composition, so one of the things I used to do with myself when I was in high school, I used to draw scribbles, and then I would try to turn the scribble into something. So I would take like just an oval shape, and then I would turn it into Homer Simpson or something. And so it was like a creativity test. And so I like that idea because of like where I put my pumpkin. I have a pumpkin right above on my wrist, the back of on my forearm or whatever. And I'm kind of excited now to kind of like figure out what squiggles I can fill in these little blanks. But I think I've always had an affinity for art styles, not so much like art as like a whole, because everybody's like, I love art. Everybody fucking loves art, obviously.
Yeah, you're a fucking human being. That's like literally what separates us from the dirt.
Right. You like food? I love food. Everybody fucking loves food. You're fucking stupid. So, but when it comes to my own personal like choices, I don't really think I need to have profoundness to all of my tattoos. No. I think they're just cool. I don't love getting tattooed because it hurts, but I think the pain is part of it. I've learned to embrace it. And but with composition, it depends on it's all about execution, because like I'm an album guy. I like to listen to albums all the way through, but I appreciate the fuck out of a good single or a really good EP too. Like it doesn't have to be a fully realized project for it to like really get me hard, but like there are a lot of things that I love about a fully realized project. So like with my arm, I did not go in with a full idea behind it. Like I think I know what my next tattoo will be, but like it's just been piecing it together, and it's been fun too because I never thought that I would ever have tattoos. So I think if people knew me like right out of high school, I had no tattoos at all, and now I do want to keep getting them. Shout out Alice and Tippets.
Fun.
Yeah, they are a lot of fun.
Honestly, dude. Well, that's the thing. Like we're in a really interesting cultural moment, and to be fair, I'm not super hip, if that makes sense. I don't know what kids or people think.
No way.
Right? But when we were kids, dude, like the idea of a tattoo that didn't have meaning, like that made you kind of like a jackass in the tattoo community. People would be like, oh, that's stupid. It should at least mean something. Or like your parents that I would say, only get something that's significant to you. My next tattoo is going to be, obviously, audience can't see this. This is a blind bag toy from an artist called Shinwoo.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah.
This guy's called DIY Burger. He's a fucking cheeseburger with teddy bear ears, X eyes, and a big old fat plump fucking tomato just crying his eyes out like Gudetama in between the buns. And this son of a bitch is going life size right here next to one of my most important tattoos, my tattoo that memorializes my sister, because we're at a more free sort of laissez-faire tattoo. Your body gets to be your body. You don't have to explain shit to people environment, which I love in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously you might still get weird questions, but I think being able to evade those questions is never been easier. To be fair, I have a bunch of fun tattoos that I get to explain to people, and they don't really coordinate very well with one another. But that's sort of the kind of person that I am, and it's nice to see that become more the culture with art. The reason why I was asking the question about composition, though I was thinking about your tattoos, is recently I was re-listening to a handful of albums with my daughter that have a common motif or theme that the album fucking comes together beautifully because of. So like in Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3 by Coheed and Cambria. Yeah. Yes. Or Isaac Brock is fucking notorious for it, but obviously Good News for People Who Love Bad News is getting a repress, like a deluxe edition this next month. And that's one of those perfect examples of an album that is just all interconnected. Like the songs bleed together so beautifully in such a compelling way. And I was going to ask you, what are your top, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 moments like that in album culture? Albums that struck you like double nickels on the dime from the fucking first hit to the end in such a good composition kind of way.
That's a great question. Well, one, I'll give a more recent example. And like maybe something that's not like been a massive influence on my like upbringing, but something that I grew to really fucking love in my like 20s. Much Love from the band Microwave. That album flows so fucking well. I love that it's weird. I think that's my favorite body of work from them. And I love how they did this really weird transition to like where the song ends and then the drums will start playing for the next song out of context. And then it'll spill into.
Like Wrong. That's my favorite instance of that on Much Love. At the intro to the song Wrong, which I forget which one bleeds into Wrong. I haven't listened to the album all the way through, but it's something like Dull or one of those other ones that goes right into it. And it's such a lovely bit. I totally agree.
I'm pretty sure Drown leads into Vomit. And that's a heavy one. That's so fucking good. But I think the first time that I because I wasn't really like a concept album guy I like it now, but I think one of the first times that I like listened to an album and realized that there was like a project to it, which is going to sound dumb, and a lot of people have already kind of like they have a preconceived notion about me, but I will say the Untitled album from Blink-182 was such a massive one for me because, it opens up with Feeling This, and then it ends with I'm Lost Without You. Yeah. And like the journey from point A to point B is such a good and like well thought out project. It's mixed. So this album's 20 years old and it still fucking sounds amazing. Like
it holds up.
It's so good and it's written beautifully. It's executed so well. Like it's Jerry Finn with all the dudes in Blink, and like to say that it's just like a pop punk album, it's not a pop punk album, dude. It's the fucking pop punk album.
Yeah, it's the quintessential pop punk moment with a lot of like very obvious cultural influences for those artists at that specific point in time. That's like right before the big break too.
Yeah. So you get stuff like the Stockholm Syndrome. The intro is like Mark Hoppus's grandmother's letter, or like his grandfather wrote a letter. God fucking damn words. All right. His grandfather wrote a letter to his grandmother during World War II, and it's literally just somebody reading the letter over like a piano riff, and then like the Fallen interlude. That's not a very approachable song. That's a weird break in the middle of an album that other bands were not doing at the time. So probably those ones, yeah.
Especially just to defy the sort of expectations that they had set on them. Songs like All of This with Robert Smith.
Love that shit. I love that song.
I mean, it's hard because not to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to put something in your mouth one way or the other. You and I are both Mark guys. Like, I mean, obviously I love all three of them, but we're both Mark guys. And like any song that is just colored that way, that's Mark Hoppus coded.
Yeah.
And that's what that album does so well. Like his spirit bled through so vividly in that. And like, I don't know if you like Less Than Jake, but he wrote a song for them, The Rest of My Life. I don't know if you've listened to that recently. Also, by the way, I'm an idiot. I know you like Less Than Jake. I don't know why I said that. but
there's a cool
The Rest
story.
of My Life.
There's a cool story with that one too.
Yeah, I actually, on my CD shelf, I have a copy of, what album is that? I have one of their albums that you got signed for me by the guys.
I think it's Anthem.
Yes, it's such a fucking great one, too. But, no, The Rest of My Life by Less Than Jake is a Mark Hoppus song, and if you listen to it, it's so obvious, you know?
Yeah, for me, it's Here's Your Letter on that album.
Oh, yes.
That's a big one. That's probably like, I wouldn't say it's my favorite song on the album because it does fluctuate, but that's such a fucking stellar Mark Hoppus song. Also, that story is you gave me that fucking Less Than Jake CD to borrow it so that I could rip it onto for all the kids listening. I used to have to rip CDs into my library. So this was when I was still in high school, and then you gave it to me, and I was like, "Shit, dude, I'll get it back to you." And I was intentionally stalling because I was going to Warped Tour, and I knew that Less Than Jake was going to be a Warped Tour, so I threw the CDs in my backpack, and I took them to Warped Tour with me, and I went and met Less Than Jake and got your CD signed. And my own. Like I took a bunch of shit. I had other shit. I didn't even need to borrow your CDs. But then I took it, got it signed, and brought it back. And I was like, oh,
I want to circle back
Yeah.
to the fucking Blink album, but can we just stop for a moment and appreciate the bygone culture of Warped Tour?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, obviously, I know that there are other festivals and stuff, but some of my very much greatest memories of my childhood were those burning hot summer days at Warped Tour, 2007, 2008, 2000 up through 2010 or 11, I think. It was a glorious experience, unfucking paralleled. Like, so in 2007, I'm 12, 13 or something at the time, I went to Warped Tour unchaperoned, which, take that as you will. And I spent a lovely and safe day exploring this fucking place. I got to interact with, like, standing at the stall for and purchasing merchandise from such bands as Anti-Flag, Kill Switch Engage. As a fucking kid getting to meet these dudes, Chiodos, and talk to them and, like, actually get time with them. And, like, now everybody is trying to fucking get a moment with everybody else. This culture doesn't exist in that same capacity anymore. No. I mean, I fucked myself up. In 2007, I fucked myself up so bad because at Warped Tour, this is early energy drink culture, by the way, and I'm not a big energy drink guy, but at Warped Tour, they would have a half pipe for you to skate, and next to the half pipe, they would have a Monster energy drink or a Rockstar energy drink, like semi-trailer. And in that semi-trailer, you could just go there, and they would irresponsibly, with no liability, hand you cold, refreshing energy drink after energy drink for $0 cost.
And it was Monster.
This is fucking Raw, and Nitro Monster was the big one that year. It was brand new.
And the BFC, they got rid of the big fucking can.
Yes. So I was poor, just to kind of to gloss over that. I was not a well-to-do person. So I brought $40 to the concert, bought a $25 t-shirt, a couple $5 bottles of water. This is, again, 2007. Festival prices are fucking dumb. So I was parched in this 110-plus June Phoenix Action, formerly Cricket Pavilion parking lot heat. So I was just guzzling cold, refreshing energy drinks. Fucking fist over fist over fist, dude. They gave me like 6 of those fucking things. Again, 12 years old. Such a horrible thing, but like I didn't die. It was just like it's such a culture that doesn't exist.
Not
and
yet,
it was so
least.
Beautiful.
You're gonna get a commercial later on. Like, did you chug Monster Energy drink at a Vans Warp Tour between these years? You may be entitled to financial compensation.
Yep. No, I mean that's probably pretty valid. And I also don't drink a lot of energy drinks anymore because, I really did kind of hurt myself that day. But yeah, dude, Warped Tour culture, festival concert culture was so beautiful in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s.
It totally was.
I mean, I don't know if it'll ever get back to that point. Obviously, concerts are still beautiful, but that was the thing. Now, the Untitled Blink album, that's the one with What Went Wrong as the secret track, right?
That one's on Take Off Your Pants and Jacket.
Oh, that's right. That's Take Off Your Pants.
But still, that's a great one too.
Different bonus tracks. Yeah, Blink had such great composition, dude. I think about, for me, it was Dude Ranch, like that really sunk the fucking hook.
That's my second favorite.
For Blink 182.
I like now being older too and listening back because I'm around the same age now that Tom DeLonge was during that album, and like hearing like they go from Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, which was like it basically ended up being Enema of the State Part 2, and that was kind of against their will because they wanted to go in a more dark or like experimental route. And then the record label's like, we're trying to sell albums, dog. So they had to go back and they start cranking out like The Rock Show and First Date. And then Tom leaves and goes and does Boxcar Racer. The Boxcar Racer album is the early foundation for the like Untitled record. The Boxcar Racer album, I mean, you can't see it. I have it signed on my wall. I fucking love the Boxcar Racer album.
That's so cool.
But I also think of like, because Mark Hoppus is butthurt that he wasn't invited to Boxcar Racer. So then that like kind of like butthurtedness, like it spawned this weird creative energy between all of them where they were like, well, then if like you didn't want to do Blink because it wasn't what you wanted and I didn't like get invited to Boxcar Racer, then like what the fuck are we even doing? And then it makes this just weird collaborative effort that was just so unique and like cool, and it holds up so well. It's so beautifully written, and that like that's an album that takes me back to so many parts of my life when I listen to it. And then I would also say too, like the foundation of When Your Heart Stops Beating from Plus 44, which is another fucking amazing record. That's the foundation for that. That's a good sequence of events. Like fucking, if you go Boxcar Racer, Untitled, and then When Your Heart Stops Beating, those are solid albums.
Blink cultural moments, man. Like, and again, I'm not here to hog ride the Three Goats, but like there's something to be said about those gentlemen at that point in history, because that's like all around the same time that Travis is starting to kick off his session drumming career, where he's on all kinds of different tracks, and that's obviously worked out for him beautifully because he's a fucking dynamo.
Yeah.
Love those guys. No, that's so beautiful. I imagine, though, Cody, that we're probably about at the point in our podcast where we take a potty break. Now,
that is correct.
I'll hold yours, you'll hold mine, and we'll resume this conversation shortly.
That sounds great. Hello and welcome to the final potty break of Season 1 of Visceral Musings. I don't have any bands, no businesses, no shows I want to plug, but I do want to talk real quick about these Q&A segments that I do. You might have heard some of them on the solo episodes. I've even tried to bleed them into regular episodes. Well, we're going to be taking a 2-week break between now and the season premiere of Season 2 of Visceral Musings. And so what I want to do is a recap episode, and this will premiere next week, next Wednesday, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you guys listen to podcasts. So be sure you're following the podcast, which is at Visceral Musings Pod on Instagram, or my personal account, which is at That Roller Pig. Thank you guys for sticking with me for the last couple weeks. Let's put a fucking bow on this thing and talk about my favorite movie of all time. I will see you guys next week on Wednesday for the Season 1 recap, and in 2 weeks for Season 2. Let's boogie. Well, first off, I do want to thank you for being the host of my show today. It's actually It's been really cool. This is the first time I've ever been interviewed before, and no, you did a great job. But today, the task at hand, the visceral musing today is going to be "I Love You Man," which is Paul Rudd and Jason Segel in like a lot of people probably know this, and if you don't, I will let you know. It's my favorite fucking movie. Like this has always been in my top 3 at least, if not my favorite. But anyway, go ahead, take it away.
I Love You, Man. And like I thought about this, obviously, take this as you will. I thought about suggesting to you, your episode should be called I Love You, Cody Reed. But then I thought maybe people will think it's a reference to I Love You, Philip Morris, starring Ewan McGregor and Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Which is a very different kind of movie, though still very good. So I Love You, Man. Absolutely fucking outstanding film. I am curious, my guy, to understand what makes this movie so juicy for you. What is it that makes this so impactful?
So, well, first off, the name of the episode is I Love You, Rashida Jones.
Oh, yes.
Because that's
the evergreen Rashida Jones.
That is correct. This Rashida Jones is like, she's not my lady, but she's my lady, if you know what I'm saying, if you know what I mean. But why does this movie matter so much to me? Why do I give a shit about it? Well, there's so much about this movie. And so I actually kind of I drew it back far enough to where, like, where was the first time that I watched this movie? And the first time that I said this name, I redacted it. I'm not going to this time. First time I ever watched this movie was with our mutual friend, Justin. And so I was a kid. I was probably 14 the first time I watched it. And so one of the things that like stuck out with this was like I was friends with Justin, but Justin was also dating my cousin. And aside from like me knowing people, a lot of the people that I knew were older than me. I didn't have like a lot of friends at school. And so when I found I Love You, Man, I thought it was funny. Like there's a scene where he throws up on him or whatever, like the throw up scene, the blowjob speech.
Shout out to Jon Favreau getting fucking hot dog chunks all over him.
This is not fucking cool. Yeah, like that was a big one for me as a like a youth. But when I got older, I really started to dissect these movies, and I talked about it a little bit with the 40-Year-Old Virgin. But I've had these comfort movies that were like something that I felt like I needed at the time, where it was my unplug from like anxiety, where I'd watch these movies, and like I Love You, Man has always been one that stuck with me because it's not just funny, but like Peter as like a character, like Paul Rudd's character, is such a fucking sweetheart. And like at his core, you know that like Sydney means well. And so like part of it is like I really do want to be friends with these people. And I didn't have friends, and I always wanted to have like that best friend. And so I think that was kind of where I like started to instill my own, I wouldn't call it like an insecurity, but definitely like a longing for friends. I was looking for it in these movies. And so in some ways, this movie was like my friend. As sad as that may sound, I don't think of it as like sad. I think I think of it in a more healthy way. Like this was my friend. So I Love You, Man was just this movie that it encompassed so many things that were so relevant to me. Like, I mean, wanting to bond with somebody over music, and then like the geeking out at the Rush show. And I slap at a bass. Slap it a bass.
Bass.
Yeah, this has always just been a mainstay in my arsenal of movies, dude. It's Jason Segel with Paul Rudd, Thomas Lennon, J.K. Simmons, Joe Latrulio, Andy Samberg. Like, it's just fucking such a great cast and an amazing story. It's actually not an amazing story. If you really look at it, it's a cliche story, but the execution is what makes it special. You know what I'm saying?
It is easily the best rom-com of the turn of the century era.
That's right.
Like it does the tropes so well, and honestly, it's beautiful because it comes to us culturally at a time where like there isn't a lot of bro love going on, if that makes sense. Like there's a lot of jokes about dudes on the down low because that's how shit is, but like there isn't a lot of I love you, man.
Right.
And that's why I think it fit that boot so well, man. Plus, man, Peter Clavin, what a guy. Oral 6 times a week.
Lock that tongue down, girl.
Yes, exactly. So I did rewatch this movie because it's one that I truly love. But when you mentioned wanting to do this podcast, I took the opportunity because I love this movie so much. It is a genuine, heartfelt rom-com. Do you feel like you resonate with any specific character in the film?
Yeah. Honestly, Probably Peter, but not for the reasons that you expect. I'm not as nice as Peter is. Peter's like very fucking nice. But I think sometimes like what I see in myself out of that is I don't think I always come across in this way, but I do feel awkward. Like whenever I do things or when I talk to people, usually it's like me forcing some point until I can find the joke in it. And for him, it's different. Like I actually wrote down a couple of the ones that I could remember. Like one of the ones where he, I don't want to know anything about her bush. Hi, Lynette.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that for that reason, yes. But I also think that I'm Sydney because Sydney is this dude. If you're hearing that, that's my phone falling down because I'm on a FaceTime call. But it keeps falling down on my fucking keyboard because I'm ill prepared. I was having laptop problems, but I'm like Sydney because I feel like in some ways I do embody like his rejection of like growing up because he's the one that's always trying to get their friends to do something. Like he's the one that's trying to be like, hey man, let's go on a hike. Let's do some acid and watch the news or whatever. I love that about him because like you don't appreciate those people in your life until they stop asking you. Once they stop asking you to go on the hike, you're like, man, that kind of sucks. And so I do appreciate.
There's that sort of shadow of growing up, where you grow apart, and it's not really necessary. And I think people realize that all too late. That this quote unquote growing up isn't implicit to growing up. I always got big Sydney 5 vibes from you. Like I feel like you and I both sort of approach conversations with people. In like the City same 5. Sort of, like City 5. I think about like the open house scene or like their first mandate, and it's like that's so me and you talking to people.
I know my farts, but that part when they're at one of my favorite things that I've never seen anybody act this way, but I wish I had because I don't have the gall. But something that I could see one of us doing potentially is when they're at that restaurant, and then he's like, "Hey, are you guys leaving pretty soon?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, we're gonna wrap." He's like, "Actually, no." Pete, you got to try the tacos. He's like, we're about to order food. I love that. I love how he's like, they're about to leave. And he's like, no, I think you should literally rank. You have to try the tacos. But I wrote down a couple of these, like, so there's a couple bits in the movie that like, they just kind of like capture my, like this weird sense of humor that I've developed. And one of them is the Hank Mardukas line. Because his dad is...
Oh my God, I wrote that down too.
Really? Yeah, because he's always like, Hank Mardukas has been my closest friend since our first year at IBM. Talk to him 2-3 times a week on the phone now. I remember this shit. So full disclosure, I did not rewatch the movie. I didn't fucking need to. So he says this, and I love when he's at the wedding and he's like, you two are my best friend. And Hank Mardukas. And it shows Hank. And all Hank does is a thumbs up. I love that shit so much. It's such a dumb joke. And it's so funny.
My note about that is literally just, and Hank Mardukas. That's what my note says on my thing right now.
And Hank Mardukas. And Robbie. Yeah, I actually made him an honorary homo last week. That's a great one, dude. A great duo is like fucking Andy Samberg and J.K. Simmons.
Yes.
So good.
What a great juxtaposition, too. Because like obviously J.K. Simmons is a funny guy and he doesn't get a lot of time to showcase that. But you kind of think of J.K. Simmons as like Whiplash. Yeah. You think of him in these very
Jonah
much
Jameson
more...
too, yeah.
Right. Tenzin from Legend of Korra. And so putting him partner to Andy Samberg was such a great casting choice. And I think it made both of them that much funnier. Yeah. Now, speaking of Andy Samberg and his conversations in that film, he talks to his brother, Peter Clavin, about being a girlfriend guy. Do you feel like you're kind of a girlfriend guy?
That's so funny. Yeah, I am a girlfriend guy. But the thing is, like, okay, so I think there's a fine line because I found a way to walk a line in such a way where I am a girlfriend guy, and it's crazy that I knew that it was going to fucking circle back because you know me too well. You know me personally enough that you could bring that up. That's funny. I think you have to find a way so this is another thing that I think is important about this movie is you have to find a way to be a girlfriend guy or to be your girlfriend's boyfriend, but to also still be yourself. And so part of the problem with like Paul Rudd in this movie is he's so great at being like he's so great at being her person. He's good at being her Like he's good at going down on her. He tongues that bitch down like several times a week. And then he doesn't always focus on himself. And so he has to strike that balance. And when he does try to do things for himself, it causes strain in his own relationship.
Yes.
Then he has to refine a balance because like he went from one end of the extreme to the other. Like for one part of the movie, he's so desperate, has no friends, is trying everything. And then he's found a really good friend, but he's so good at being his friend that he's not as good as he was at being a boyfriend. So then you have to find a way to strike that balance. I think not until I was probably 24 was I good at striking that balance.
Well, it's a hard balance to pull off, man. And I think that you're in good company when it comes to not knowing the best way to execute being a present partner and a present friend.
Yeah.
You know, that's a difficult fucking struggle. Do you feel like you also look longingly at people who seem to have friendships like dudes in suits that are carpooling to work? And also, what the fuck were those guys like? What was their problem?
I don't know. Yeah, because he just looks at them and waves at them, and they all give it. It was probably really fucking funny in that car though to be like, just give this guy a dirty look.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't envy friendships anymore like I used to. I think I look back and I think of certain things that like maybe were important to me when I was a kid, and that's not one of them anymore. I think there are meaningful friendships that I've made, but I just kind of had to stop being such a fucking tryhard. That was harder than anything. And I mean, too, for Peter Clavin to stop being a fucking tryhard, that was when he finally like settled down and let himself just be himself. That was when people were more interested in him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
That and the billboards probably helped a lot.
Yeah, he'll sell your house in his dreams or in his sleep or something like that.
Oh my God, dude, they're so good together. Do you think that if Peter and Zoe get divorced, that's Paul Rudd and Rashida Jones, that Pete and Sydney would stay together?
I would like to think so. I would like to think that Sydney would be like a ride or die. No matter what, if like he's gonna help him get through the breakup, and that might be another great movie. He's getting a divorce from Zoe, and they're just going through like his midlife crisis / like he's getting divorced, and like trying to navigate.
Like learning to love yourself. It's like a switch on that. Honestly, dude, like fortunately for you, Jason Segel is an avid listener to your podcast because he needs to make that film. I think of, what's that one that he was in with Russell Brand and Kristen Bell?
Oh, I love that. Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall kind of vibe to it. Speaking of Jason Segel and his funness in that film, he does an Andre the Giant impression at one point.
Yeah, he does.
Did you watch that COVID-era Princess Bride production that a lot of those actors contributed to, including but not limited to Jason Segel with his puppets?
No, that's fucking awesome. I never even heard of that.
Oh my God, I'll have to find it and send you the link. But I rewatching it, I had that brought to mind because it was clear that was a moment that he just had to have. Like he had it as the character Sidney Fife, but he had to have it in real life too. And so he did. He did a very good job. It's actually very funny.
I love that. Dude, I fucking used to sit back and rewatch I've watched the gag reel, the deleted scenes, one of my favorite ones, one of my other favorite, I forgot to write this down. You're a whore, Peter. The Thomas Lennon.
Yeah. Oh, God, yes, dude.
But yeah, dude, Jason Segel is like a weirdo, and he's got this affinity for puppets. And so Forgetting Sarah Marshall, that puppet show was actually like his magnum opus. He always wanted to do a puppet show. But that's so rad. I can't believe I've never heard of that before.
It was the taste of betrayal. You fucking whore.
Another key scene of that fucking movie is when Thomas Lennon just like shoves his tongue down Paul Rudd's throat.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
He
gives him the
there.
after kiss too. Oh. Like that's my favorite part of that scene and what message it gives is because Paul Rudd is obviously not engaging in his kiss, but he still gets that fucking follow up little peck smooch on the way off.
He gave him punctuation right at the end.
Yes, dude. Oh. Such a killer rom-com. And that's the thing that I love so much about this movie is it is like essentially familiar and comfortable because it kind of defies some of those toxic masculinity roles that were really common in the early and probably throughout all of society up to this day, but definitely leading up to the mid 2000s when it was published. I mean, really not common to see this sort of vulnerability. And also, like, as a musician, you have to, like, maybe you know the backstory on this, but you have to admit there's something just tantalizing about Sydney's fucking jam room and his masturbation session area.
Jerk-off station.
Yeah, his jerk-off station. He's got amazing posters, but the instruments and the equipment in that place, all the Tolexed out fucking full Marshall stacks, you know, his definitely Geddy Lee coated jazz bass with the big block inlays.
Yeah.
All of them American made.
When he lives in a cool little bungalow type vibe too, like his house is really cool. And he's like, he wins that go-kart. He's like a Carnival Kid 85. He had to beat him in a bidding war on eBay. And then
he had to go for the buy it now price.
Right. And so his wedding present to them was the $8,000 billboards. But I just thought of something though. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the way that you were talking about like vulnerability and like toxic masculinity, I wouldn't say that I'm like toxically masculine, but I am emotionally retarded in the sense that like I've never been able to reciprocate in a sense. Like there's been times when people will say things to me that are like I love you or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like I've felt it, but not been able to say it back. And there's a thing that they do in the movie, which is like they do the like bro nameth. Like they use the bros are like their that's their way, that's their scapegoat out of it. So they're always like, hey man. So then at the end of it, that's when they finally tell each other that they love each other. And so you go through like the struggle of them, because he doesn't even tell his brother that he loves him. And they have like, he has a weird, strained relationship with his brother because he has like this inability to communicate. Like, of course he loves Andy Samberg the same way that anybody else loves their sibling, but he doesn't say it. And he doesn't ever address it.
That is definitely as a result of toxic masculinity. Right. Like this isn't to paint anybody into a corner. The fact is, its cultural output on us is men not feeling able to do that, not knowing that they can and should express their love for the people they care about. Yeah, you know, which is one of the things as a kid that was very liberating for me about this movie. Is I was like, yeah, you can tell people that you love them, and I have since then. Yeah. Because it's so important, you know? There's
been people that I've interviewed, even on this show, like, and like to be completely candid too, like I'm not an interviewer. I never was before this. This is like a new avenue for me. But part of the reason why I've always asked my friends to do it, or like to see if because I fucking love my friends. And there's a lot of times like when I hit you up, especially when I came up with this idea for Visceral Musings, you were the first, if not then the second person on my list for like people that I wanted to talk to. And like I've been accused of being an asshole in the past, and you know what? I will take that because I definitely have been. I like to push a little bit. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I think, and I'm not going to blame it solely on this movie because there's a lot of personal growth too, but like stuff from this movie was my introduction to saying I love you to your friends. And when I got older, I realized that like they say like there's the family you're assigned or whatever, and then there's the family that you choose. And the people that I ended up surrounding myself with, or like my family, so to speak, were not the people that I was born with because I don't really even talk to them so often. And so like the friends that I made, like this was kind of maybe in a certain sense, this was being able to like, you know, knock down that wall a little bit to make it like destigmatizing a little bit. But yeah, no, it's like, this is another thing where it's like, you know, there is a part of the movie where they fall on a rough patch. And it's like his friendship with Sydney puts a strain on his relationship. So instead of like self-assessing, he lashes out at Sydney instead. So he goes from one opposite of the other, like one extreme to the other. And so in doing so, he only highlights the negative personality traits of Sydney, and Sydney does the same to Peter. Because he's like, you're going to watch fucking Chocolate with Johnny Depp? Like, it's called Chocolate, because he keeps calling it Chocolat. Yeah. And so, so he he makes it sound like he's fucking ridiculous for doing this. He's like, I do love my HBO nights with Zoe or whatever. And so he
It's not cable, it's HBO.
Yeah. But he tells him he tells him about like your friends are all fucking moving on because you can't. So everybody else is passing you on and they're moving on with their fucking lives because you're stuck in the past. You can't grow up or whatever. But then you kind of find out like it is kind of beautiful actually that he doesn't grow up. And like most people do grow up all the time, and Sidney is successful on his own, but he still wants to have meaningful relationships with other people that don't necessarily have to be romantic or physical. You know what I mean?
So, like, that's the thing. I remember as a kid knowing less than I do now, as everyone does, and thinking like, well, that seems kind of shoddily put together. How can you convince me that Sidney Fife is a successful investor? But then I think about his gear room. That fucking vintage 50s era gold top that he has hanging up there represents like $10,000 to $20,000 just in the back of his room. Like, obviously this motherfucker's cooking because the street price of the items in his man cave has to exceed $10,000. I mean, like not $10,000, like $100,000 any given Sunday.
Right.
And speaking of his man station, his man cave, I was thinking about this rewatching the movie. And I'm not trying to cast stones at a fictional character, but perhaps you can help me understand, since this movie means a lot to you. You probably thought about this. Why would you want to masturbate for longer?
Okay, no, I've thought about this too. Like that's never been a goal for me. I've never been like I feel like I've masturbated in a pinch where I'm like, dude, we got to get this.
Sure.
We got to get the ball rolling.
Sure.
I don't understand that at all. And then another thing I don't understand is he's got the tissues, the lotion, and the condom. So I'm like, you put the lotion on your hand to rub the condom? I don't understand. I don't understand what he's going for with that one.
I think that's just a prop failure.
Yeah, I don't get it. And then what is the tissue for? He says it's for. He says it makes cleanup easier. But then there's tissues. I don't know. I don't understand that scene at all. Because I think it's funny that he has a jerk off station.
Oh, it's extremely funny, and I think that it's an artistic device to kind of illustrate something about the sort of earnest nature of Sidney's character.
Yeah.
But it is very funny.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. One of the things, too, that I wrote down, it's weird to let you guide the conversation and then to also refer to my own notes. But he says in the fart scene when he said, roll down the windows in that car, sweetheart. And then he does the breakdown, the play-by-play, like what does he drive? He breaks down what he drives, how much it costs realistically, and like how it's a Saab, whatever, 9.8. He's like, which I'm not a snob, it's a nice car, but like he's looking at Lou Ferrigno, and he's like, I've always wanted to have a pad that has a Lou Ferrigno statue in it. So I think I finally found one. And so one of the things that I wrote down, though, which I think you'll have plenty to harp in on this one, is friend breakups fucking suck.
Yes. No, absolutely. It's actually devastating. And like I think about even the fadeaways in my own personal history. So people who I used to be very close to that I never hear from, that I don't make the time for, and I realize it's devastating. It's actually genuinely hurtful because it's a part of life that you've let die. That's a piece of your garden untended.
Right. I thought about this too. Like I don't really talk about it a whole lot because why would I? But I was engaged once upon a time. Now I am somebody who doesn't believe in getting married, which is insane. If you look at the juxtaposition between like where I'm at now at 27 versus where I was in my early 20s when I was engaged, I was going to be married, to be wed. That's insane. Like if you just picture it, but like there were so many friends that I had made at the time, and like we just. When that ended and we broke up, like I broke up with friends too. And then I also found out that a lot of friends actually weren't really there for me. And I've also had a lot of friends that have tried to fuck an ex-girlfriend after like we've broken up. And I'll tell you what, that hurts, maybe just as bad, if not worse than the initial fucking breakup. So I identified heavily with like, I think there's been times where I've had falling outs with friends, such as like this movie. And I think it's a really realistic way that they kind of show how dudes when they actually get like two guys in the same room that have had beef or like they've fallen out with one another, how they just kind of like on a dime they're back and they're friends again over like one fucking thing where he just shows up to the wedding. He's like, I love you, bro, Namath.
Right. Well, and he was on his way too. Like, there's such a beautiful element of care there. I'll tell you, that same scene that you're describing for me instilled a kind of different but similar residual feeling. And that's like, and I think off camera, off recording, we were talking about the Storyteller book by Dave Grohl, which I listened to in 2021, or at the very beginning of 2022. And it ties into this because I was thinking about how, like, you go around every day interacting with strangers, and anyone that you meet at any point in time could be someone else's best friend. And for me, like, I'm not perfect. I've definitely been an asshole. But, like, it instilled this sort of observation of compassion that I just didn't have in my life at that point. I wasn't satisfactorily compassionate, but then I realized, like, I could be hurting somebody's best friend. Like, even obviously you don't want to hurt somebody, but I thought about that idea of hurting somebody's best friend and how devastating that is. You know, because like that's a person that you love, and you don't ever, like, we don't look at our adversaries or our strangers as whole people. But oftentimes almost every time, they have somebody that loves them like Peter loves Sydney, you know, that means the world to them. And like, how could you do that to somebody's Sydney Fife?
Yeah.
You know, how could you hurt somebody in that way? The reference to the Storyteller was, it was around the time, I didn't realize, I think it was actually just after Taylor Hawkins had died that I listened to that book. And I just thought, like, that was somebody's best friend. For all of his professional accolades, Taylor Hawkins was Dave Grohl's best friend. And to see a man go through the loss of their best friend was devastating.
Yeah, and it humanizes them too, because, like, again, the same way you don't think of your adversaries as people, you don't look at these figures that like have influenced you or have, like, you know, informed your opinion or your beliefs, or even like your favorite fucking albums have come from them. You don't always look at them as people either. You look at them as like some otherworldly being where you're like, nothing can happen to them. And when you really strip it back and you listen to like the raw emotion, like if you listen to the song Sleep on the most recent Foo Fighters album, it's like Foo Fighters, but it's like, fuck. Yeah. That was so dumb. I don't know why I just fucking did the Christopher Walken. But yeah, anyway, when you really like strip it back and you look at the humanity of it, like if you look at the humanity of the situation and you're like, man, all shit aside, like, was this a great drummer? Was this like, you know, somebody whose mind we no longer have access to? Yes, but at its core, you know, this was a dude and his fucking friend. And that hurts. And so when
he was somebody's best buddy, man.
And they were like, if you watch, like, I'm sure you have, but like for like a listener, if they've never sat and like watched, you know, Dave and like, there's no other way to describe it if you're not a musician, but if you watch them speak drums to each other, it's such a beautiful thing, because they'll be sitting in the studio and like kind of tapping things out or like mimicking things. And like, there's this one video, like in particular, where he's showing him how he's like, what he's thinking of while he's doing it. And he's like he's acting it out, and then he keeps going, and like Taylor goes to play another part, and he's like, oh, I see. And then like that's how they worked out a song, literally, just like. And this is a Grammy nominated album that they're doing. They're just sitting there tapping on their legs and shit, like how I do it. And so you don't always find people that are going to speak that same language that you do. And like, you know, I love Josh Freese too, but like there will never be another Taylor Hawkins. And so I understand what you're talking about.
He's just somebody's best friend. And as a kid, like, I don't know. I think everybody has their own personal struggles, and I cared a lot for people, but I didn't really have an abstract form of compassion. I think a lot of kids don't, until probably around the time that I became more intimately familiar with this film, because I was like, oh, fuck, man. Like, to know love for another person and to see them go through pain is one of the hardest parts of parenting, but definitely one of the hardest parts of humaning, when you realize that, like, your lack of discretion at a moment could be hurting somebody else's Sydney Fife. You could be shitting on somebody else's Peter Clavin. And that's devastating, because there's such beauty to that friendship. Yeah. And obviously the nature of their friendship might be different, but it's the same spirit.
Yeah, it's well fucking put, dude. You have another question for me? Or are you ready for my final thoughts?
So I would love, my guy, to hear your final thoughts, and then I have two final questions after that.
All right, well, the very first time that I watched this movie, as I said before, was somebody who, I watched it with somebody who, like, I don't really talk to anymore. And so, like, that part of it was also important to me because at the time I was younger and this was an older person who was showing me this movie. And, like, I wasn't always in on the jokes, but I remember, like, being explained the jokes. And then as I've gotten older, this has been a movie that stuck with me, through and through. It's been something that I've revisited when I've gone through breakups, when I've gone through hardships with friends. And it was important to me then, and it's important to me now. And I can revisit parts of my life when I go back and watch it because, like I said, it's my favorite fucking movie. We've talked about a lot of things that I really, really like, but this is like my favorite movie. And I think I modeled a lot of wanting friends off of the movies that I was watching. And, like, aside from this movie, also How I Met Your Mother, which is also Jason Segel. But when you strip it back to its bare bones, it is a buddy comedy movie that is so much more special to me because I love these characters and I want to be friends with them. And like we were talking about earlier, this is something that destigmatized me being able to tell another man or another friend of mine that I fucking love them. And, making sure that my friends do know that I love them. Every time that I get off a podcast with somebody that's my friend, I've interviewed people that I'm not friends with too. I always say, like, all right, I love you, dude. This was great. Thank you for doing it. And then I sit for a time afterwards because this is my first season of doing this show. And, like, wrapping it up has always been, like, it's been special because I get to sit and I get to, like, we're not on camera anymore. We're not on recording anymore. I can just be like, fucking thank you so much for doing this with me and for, like, sticking your neck out for me and thinking, like, that I could actually interview you and do this. So, simply put, it's a movie that taught me how to heal that part of me that maybe thinks that telling your friends you love them is gay, because it's definitely, and you know what, it totally can be. It could be gay. I love you in a very gay way,
can be gay.
Nicholas. But
right. No, thank you, man.
And it's hilarious. It embodies so much of how I've related my own sense of humor and how it's become apparent to my own personal relationships. So that is my final thoughts on why I Love You, Man is important to me and why I think it should be important to you.
Fucking splendid. Now, we've talked at length about something that you love. I did write a note down. I meant to bring this up earlier, but I realized I failed to. You have shared some pretty harsh opinions on Taylor Swift, my guy. Do you think that she loves I Love You, Man? Do you think she can appreciate the wonder of I Love You, Man?
I think that she likes shit that's more like The Notebook or something more akin to, like, what's that one movie, The Time Traveler's Wife? Stuff like that lacks substance but is very popular. You know what I mean? Something.
Wow. Those are missiles fired, my guy.
I'm taking shots, dude. Okay, so Taylor Swift is a phenomenal songwriter. But, at the end of the day, is she writing things that mean anything to anybody? Is she kind of copying Lana Del Rey's flow? Abso-fucking-lutely. But is she writing things that matter? I don't think so. I think that there are things that, like, resonate with people, but on a very surface level. And
I think that Taylor Swift has done a great job finding a way to tell her artistic story through what is popular. Like, if you look at her artistic history from Speak Now, which was her first full self-write, to today, there's been a lot of, like, diversity. She's changed in a lot of ways, but I think at each point she's trying to tell an honest artistic story, but whatever is working at that point. Like,
there's a term for that. It's called culture vulture.
Yeah, I feel like I'm such a prick saying this, but, like, I think about Reputation and Taylor Swift's album Reputation, which to me I think epitomizes that culture identity shift for her, where she went from being an artist communicating an internal story that was very, singer-songwriter style to this very pop-heavy appearance, and it felt very much like that. It was like my first jumping off point as a person who is historically very much appreciated her as an artist and a creator. And I feel the same way about her most recent album, despite collaborations with Florence Welch and with
I love her
Posty Maloney.
Yeah, I like both of those.
Oh my God.
I like both of those songs, actually, that you're talking about. But I don't... Okay, so is unseasoned boiled chicken breast still food? And is it good for you? Yeah, sure. But does that mean I want to fucking eat it? No.
That's so funny.
That's what she is. She is boiled chicken breast with no salt or pepper to me.
I love that you're talking about Taylor Swift's boiled chicken breasts right now, and I can really appreciate that you're so passionate about it. I will say I disagree in that I think she would like I Love You Man. I think Taylor Swift has a critical sense of irony, and I think that the beauty of I Love You Man being the best rom-com of our generation is not lost on a person like Taylor Swift. I mean, I always sort of imagined, that Taylor Swift will one day fade from music popularity and assume a role writing rom-coms. I kind of peg her as the writing rom-coms kind of guy.
Word, yeah, okay.
But I don't know if she'll ever reach the heights of I Love You Man. I don't know if anyone ever will. It's a perfect rom-com.
It's lightning in a bottle, for sure. I think that there's other pop stars or people that are like kind of pop star adjacent, like Lana Del Rey or Phoebe Bridgers, that are already interesting on their own. And like,
Phoebe Bridgers is so good. I don't know, like not to go off on a tangent, but what is it? She has a collaboration group with
Boy Genius. I fucking love Boy Genius. Yeah,
Boy Genius is so good, and it was through Boy Genius that I started to kind of listen to more of her music. And I cannot remember the other two's names right now, but I have both
Lucy and Julian.
Yes, Lucy Dacus
and Julian Baker.
I have Historian by Lucy Dacus on my heavy rotation right now because it is so fucking good.
She's amazing. Those are phenomenal songwriters that are going to stand the test of time, no matter what. Okay, so to be fair, though, I do enjoy a lot of Taylor Swift's music. I think that the hype behind her is sometimes unwarranted, but I don't take away from like the cultural impact she's had. I think that when I listen to certain things that she's done, like, I mean, she did have Paramore open for her on like stadium tours, which is really fucking sick, actually, when you really like dig into that. But there are things that Taylor Swift has done that's just so generic and cranked out that I'm like, and like other bands that I really like have done it too. Like the album 9 from Blink-182, like that's a bad album. The same way that I would argue that like the most recent Taylor Swift album is like the
Tortured Penis Department.
Yes, it's the most watered down version of Lana Del Rey that you could ask for. And so like there's other people that are more interesting to me and I don't understand the hype around her. Kind of like the same when I was in Seattle. Again, I love Nirvana, especially the older that I've gotten, but Seattle is a city that used to go so fucking hard for Nirvana. And I'm like, Kurt Cobain is dead, man. Like there are other artists, there's other things that are happening right now. And we're missing
Nirvana is so good, but I'm with you. I understand the spirit of your statement. I really do. Nirvana is so fucking good, though.
I love Nirvana. Don't get me wrong, but there are other phenomenal like acts that are coming out of Seattle. But when you hyperfixate on this one thing, it overclouds everything else. And like that's not just
everything.
Yeah, else. And that's not just. I'm not comparing Nirvana to Taylor Swift at all.
Sure,
but I'm just saying, like in the same context,
you might as well. Honestly, like I'm hoping her next one. I've overheard that her next one's actually going to be a take on Nevermind. So
word, okay.
You heard it here first.
I thought she already did that with Olivia Rodrigo.
I will say 100%. I love you, and I'm grateful to get to share this question with you about our good friend Taylor Swift. I love Taylor Swift, the artist. I agree with you about Taylor Swift, the celebrity. Cody Reed, I would love if you could, at this point in the podcast, for you to tell me your top 3. Now, they could be anything. They could be songs. They could be porn channels. They could be albums, they could be podcasts, whatever you'd like. Top me 3 times, please.
All right. Well, you know what kind of sucks is I just did an episode recently, which I did the Love Guru, and so that was very close in proximity to when we're doing this one. But I've managed to find 3 more for you. I dug deep. I put ring and middle finger together, and I reached deep into myself and found 3 more for you. So first up, I got The GOAT, which is this new reality TV show, and it's so much fucking fun to watch. It's Daniel Tosh hosting, and they're trying to find out who the greatest reality TV star of all time is, and it's fucking hilarious. Daniel Tosh is so goddamn funny in it. Number 2 for you, I got Microwave, Let's Start Degeneracy. It is a
it's a
weird
good
album.
one.
It's so weird.
Did you buy the bisexual flag color marble from Zia?
No, I should have.
Oh yeah, you go on down there. They probably still have some at the Mesa store. That was the last one I was at.
I live right down the road from a Zia. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to dox myself, but I'll have to go check it out. I actually, for Record Store Day, I was going to put it on here, but I didn't. I bought Unlocked from Kenny Beats and Denzel Curry. Phenomenal record. That's not in my top 3. I just wanted to throw that out there. But Microwave, Let's Start Degeneracy. This is an album where these guys actually grew up, and it is a weird ayahuasca trip of an album. It's so fucking... So if you like the Wonder Years and you like Aretha Franklin, then this is for you, dude, because it combines the most obscure of influences and cranks out this weird, religiously traumatized R&B influenced emo record. The one thing that they do that's always been strange to me is they have these really big dynamic instrumentals and they wash out the main vocals. And they do it a lot, especially in the song Bored of Being Sad. There's these really dynamic layers of like a cappella vocals and they wash it out into the mix. And it's such a weird creative choice, but it truly does create something that's like it's so unique to them specifically. So yeah, Microwave, Let's Start Degeneracy. And then last up, we have Idol's Tank, and specifically Dancer, which is the LCD Sound System song. The reason why I put this on here is we were talking about our friend Charles. And so shout out Charles Ellsworth. I actually do hope you hear this because I do want you to listen to my podcast and validate me and top me. But so Charles Ellsworth we shared a bunch of stuff back and forth about how he's struck up an alliance with LCD Sound System. And so I thought that was so fucking rad. And I was trying to explain to my girlfriend because she's not into the same shit that I'm into all the time. And I was like, you know who LCD Sound System is? And I was like, well, my friend Charles works for LCD Sound System. So I had to dig it out. And I was like, I showed you Dancer from Idols. And so I showed her, she's like, oh yeah, I remember you playing this all the time. And so, yeah, Idols Tank it's an album. It's not my favorite Idols album, but it's definitely worth a listen. Specifically,
it's so positive.
Yeah, Dancer and Gift Horse. Gift Horse is such a great fucking song.
Gift Horse. What's the other one? They have Hall & Oates about his buddy. That one's so cute. I love the positive message in that album so much.
And another thing is I don't typically enjoy a saxophone, but I love the way that album ends because it's so weird in Idols to end with a saxophone solo. But yeah, that's my top 3. Do you have a top 3?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. Today, my top 3 is going to be... let me pull something out of myself. I'm going to go with top 3 sitcoms.
Okay.
Yeah, so number 3 is This Fool. I don't know if you've watched
I love
This
that
Fool.
show. Yeah, it's so great.
It's so silly. It's the sort of Chicano style sitcom. I think that I just finished the season 2, which is up to this point the only 2 seasons that are out. Very funny.
Final one, yeah.
I loved This Fool. It was very fun. I'm going to go with my second sitcom being Bob's Burgers. I know that's a cartoon, but it's a very sitcom style cartoon.
It's funny.
Classic. If you haven't watched all 15 seasons of Bob's Burgers, put your phone down and begin immediately. H. John Benjamin, Eugene Merman, Kristen Shaw, outstanding. I'm not like one of those H. John Benjamin freaks. No shame, H. John Benjamin freaks. It's totally well deserved. But I fucking really love that guy.
I do
He's
too.
so funny.
I love him in Wet Hot American Summer. That was my first introduction to him. Yeah, he stuck with me. Oh, you know what?
And
actually,
speaking of,
real quick, there's this episode of Nathan For You where he does this thing where he has H. John Benjamin feed him interview answers to see if he could get a job based off of confidence alone. And he's like, so he's only saying what H. John Benjamin's saying to him. And he says, hi, my name is Nathan, or you can call me my nickname that all my friends call me, the N-word.
Oh my God.
So funny.
I made a reference to that. Actually, I got just a side tangent before I say one last thing on H. John Benjamin. I made a reference to that and got in a bit of a scuffle with my brother my sister-in-law, I guess you'd call her, my brother's baby mama's family, because they were doing like a voting pool, like on how much the baby was going to come out weighing and what sex, and that's what I put my name was the N-word.
That's awesome. I love that. It's so funny.
Thank you.
But
H. John Benjamin, for me, the first time I heard him was actually Home Movies. Do you remember Home Movies?
Yeah, damn, that's okay. Yeah. Shit, I haven't even thought about that.
That's a big throwback to ancient Adult Swim culture.
Yeah.
And then the reason I think why I reached for sitcoms is my number one, which is going to be New Girl. Our good friend we were just talking about, Taylor Swift, has a cameo in the show New Girl, along with other great people like
Prince. Prince is in it.
Gordon Ramsay, Prince. Outstanding.
Brooklyn
in
Nine-Nine.
terms of
the entire Brooklyn
there's a
Nine-Nine's
crossover episode with Andre Braugher and Andy Samberg.
I love Brooklyn
Joe Trulio.
Nine-Nine. Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows.
It's that's another great sitcom. But man, I'll tell you, if you haven't watched New Girl,
I have.
It might give
good.
big Taylor Swift vibes, but I have to say it's definitely my very favorite sitcom. Every character in there has something, except, well, I don't know. I don't want to throw shit on people, but I legitimately love them. I'm a big Lamorne Morris fan because of his performance as Winston.
Yeah. Speaking of what we were going on the N-word thing, he did one time dress up like Edward Scissorhands and called himself N-word Scissorhands. It was so fucking funny. He did it on the Eric Andre show. But yeah, no, I love New Girl. If that's maybe I need to give Taylor Swift another shot, because I love New Girl.
Yeah,
I've seen it all the way through twice.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember her cameo in the episode where Cece is going to get married to Shivrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that show so
hilarious,
much.
Yeah. All right, dog. Well, that's all I got for you today. And if you're ready to put a bow on this thing,
yes, let's wrap it up, man. I'm glad to have been able to be a part of your podcast, your episode, season 1, episode 10.
Well, I can't believe it that we actually got through 10 fucking episodes of Visceral Musings. So if you have actually stuck through and you've listened to these, I really genuinely fucking appreciate you spending your Wednesdays with me, and I have worked very hard on this, and so I appreciate that my friends are willing to make not only 1 but 2 appearances, and there will be other times that you hear us talk as well. So yeah, thank you to Nicholas Oz Perez. I can't even say that with a straight face. It's just Oz.
Just call me N-word Scissorhands.
Shouts out to N-word Scissorhands today for taking the wheel for me. Thank you guys for listening to Visceral Musings Season 1. This is episode 10. That's so fucking crazy to think about in retrospect. But follow us on all the social medias if you have them. We have at Visceral Musings Pod on Instagram. I also revamped that Facebook page. I don't know if anybody ever looks at it. I think my mom does. Shouts out to my mom. And maybe your mom will too. This is where she'll finally find it. Shout out to Karen. But yes, thank you so much, dude. And I love you, man.
I love you, man.
We'll have to do this again sometime. Well, thank you for helping me put a bow and a finger in the ass of season 1 of Visceral Musings.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Anytime.
Let's play. One last time this season, I'm going to have the title music play us out.